Hello everyone, this is again Clark and welcome to another bookish video. The conclusion to Mistborn Era 2 has been finally out and I couldn't contain my excitement. That is why I read it while it's still hot. This video anyway is going to review books 1 to 4 of Mistborn Era. So expect that there will be a lot of spoilers, or this video is going to be spoilery. So if you haven't read the series and plan to do so maybe in the future, then do not watch this video. Okay, let's get a ball rolling. All right, so just to give it a heads up, I'm going to review the entire series or the entire saga, which means I'm going to begin with the Alloy of Law in a while. And it's to be followed by the second book of the Mistborn 2 or Era 2, which is called Shadows of Self. And then the third book, which is The Bands of Mourning, and the recently published conclusion to the entire series called The Lost Metal. And along with my review here, or with my video or my vlog, I'm going to mention as well some of the Easter eggs that I found while reading the book, actually. There are a lot of interesting things about the Cosmere universe, which we can spot in the book 4 of the series, The Lost Metal. And I'm very excited to let you know what are these information or features. Yes, in fact, I'm gobsmacked to know that there's a connection between Rishar and Scadrial. And at the same time, I'm very happy to know as well that there are characters in different books of Brandon Sanderson in the Cosmere universe that appeared in book 4. Yes. Now, without any further ado, let's begin. Honestly, when we talk about the entire series, I have mixed feelings because the book started not very well. But over time, as the book progresses, I could see a lot of development or significant improvement along the way, especially in terms of character build-up and world building. But to be fair, I like the book in general. I really would consider this as one of the best series that I've read, even if it started not very well, as I said earlier. Maybe one of the reasons why I had that initial reaction when I read Alloy of Law is because I still couldn't move on of the Mistborn Era 1, or the first, trilogy of the what we call Mistborn series, because I really had very high expectations in Alloy of Law. But when I read the second, third, and even the fourth book, I could say that, this is really one of the remarkable, shall I say, features, or shall I say, style of Brandon Sanderson when developing a book. There's this what we call, some people would call it Sander lunch, yes, which means as the story actually unfolds, it's getting better and better and better until such time in the end, it would end with a bang or explosion, as in literal explosion. You will know when you read the Lost Metal. Now let's talk about the Alloy of Law. I knew it's too early to say this and judge the book at the very least, but so far, I did not get the Tinker's Dam, if you'd like to ask me, after reading the Alloy of Law. This another series in the Cosmere universe set in Mistborn world started 300 years after the original story. Scadrial, now powered by modern technological breakthroughs such as steel-framed skyscrapers piercing the clouds, is reigned by modern elite family or houses. However, despite the emergence of technology, old magics of allomancy and ferrochemy still play a pivotal role in the reborn world. Waxilium Ladrian, our main character, who is a rare twin-born, can push on metals through his allomancy and use ferrochemy to become lighter or heavier at will. He is the main character of the series, as I said, and after long years of being in the roughs, Wax has been forced by a family tragedy to return to Elendil. Without hesitations, he has put away his guns and take responsibility to unravel the danger that lurks around the streets of the city, of course with the help of some important characters as well, such as Marasi and Dwayne. That's the premise of the Alloy of Law. I still have recollection of events in Mistborn Era 1. And I can say that this new series, Era 2, set in the same world, which is called Scadrial, is different from that one in terms of plot, world building, politics, magic system, sort of, and most of all, character dynamic. I think that this comparison that I'm going to mention in a while makes sense for a very obvious reason. Mhm. The points of comparison might bring you some spoilers, or shall I say, might give you some information ahead. So if you haven't read it yet and plan to do so in the future, you may skip reading this. First point of comparison, plot. Mhm. You know that Mistborn Era 1 has obvious features that make it fantasy. It's really high fantasy, Percy. But here in Mistborn Era 2, it's more on urban fiction, since this no longer focuses on the dark forces that envelop the setting, but on heists and criminalities that happen in the streets of Elendel. Hence, if you're expecting of a dark one that dominates the world through this extraordinary power in Wax and Wayne series, do not pick this book, since it's just all about dealing with powerful miscreants. And that's what I observed in book one. Although I have to admit that it changed over time, especially when I already read the third book and most of all, the fourth book of the series. The second point of comparison is magic system. Well, allomancy and ferocemy are still there, but they are not as fleshed out as they were in Mistborn 1, where Brandon Sanderson actually explained the magic system in a methodical manner. Perhaps the author, Brandon Sanderson, assumed that the readers already knew the magic system and there's no need to complicate things here. While the chemical properties of the metals and how they influence the mistings or even the mistborns are the major takeaway in the former, the latter, which is the Mistborn Era 2, underscores how can these people be classified according to their capabilities when they burn metals. For example, there are those groups called vanishers, pushers, band alloys. We have the lichers. And in Mistborn 2, it's more on how these metals actually function. All right. The next point of comparison is politics and religion. Sadly, politics and religion are no longer few of the major themes in the alloy of law. But over time, I realized that it really is all about religion, especially in books 3 and 4. But book 1, it's really, really different. I was expecting here that 300 years after the legacy of different houses that overthrew Lord Ruler, sorry, I'm tongue-tied, would be continued in this book. But sadly, it didn't happen in the alloy of law, at least. The theme of religion, which is one of the Brandon Sanderson's strength when making a story, was not emphasized in book 1. I thought that Sased, who was master of many religions in Mistborn Era 1, would be able to have his own. But unfortunately, it's no longer included, at least here in the book 1. There's just one religion established by Killshare, but it was only subtly mentioned there. Now, the fourth comparison is character dynamic. The characters in Wax and Wayne series, that's the other term for Mistborn Era 2, are very far from those in Mistborn 1. Some readers may agree with me that, they're very different in terms of their dynamic, in terms of their abilities, or in terms of the synergy of the group. Some readers may argue, though, that Mistborn 1 is one-dimensional, but at least the synergy and dynamic, as I said, are intact. Okay, the belongingness in each one of them, has been very consistent since book 1 to book 3 of the original Mistborn trilogy. However, in the same manner, in Era 2, the camaraderie was still there among the characters, but I doubt of its strength. I doubt of the synergy of the group as a whole. But then again, As I said, it might be too early for me to say that, you know, because I realized that, you know, the team spirit among the group of the main character Waxilian, and of course Marasi, and his wife, in fact, and Wayne have become more solid this time especially in third and fourth books. Okay. Frost fingers. That's what I actually said when I read Alloy of Law. I hope that their group will become more solid in books 2, 3, and 4. And yeah, fortunately, Brandon Sanderson actually kept that feature in most of his books. My experience in book one, The Alloy of Law, might not that be good. At least it's not worse. So even if that's the case, I still gave this book a 3-star rating. All right, now let's talk about the second book of the entire series called Shadows of Self. Shadows of Self shows Mistborn society evolving as technology and magic mix. The economy grows, democracy contends with corruption, and religion becomes a growing cultural force, with 4 faiths competing for converts. This bustling, optimistic, but still shaky society now face its first instance of terrorism, crimes intended to stir up labor strife and religious conflict. Wax and Wayne, assisted by the lovely, brilliant Marasi, must unravel the conspiracy before civil strife stops Cadriel's progress in its tracks. Shadows of Self will give fans of the Alloy of Law everything they've been hoping for. I'm very happy to let you know that this series is getting better and better insofar as plot development, character build up, and themes are concerned. Unlike in the first book where I have a lot of issues or negative feedback, this one gave me a level of satisfaction that I needed from a fantasy book for me to be able to call it a satisfying read. Characters have been developed very well, although there are still those I need to see more of their potential. I noticed that Brandon Sanderson here was so engrossed with the character development of the main character himself, Wax. That would be possible if Wayne and Marcy are to be given their spotlight in the next book, book 3. And this is really a very spoilery information, but in books 3 and 4, more character development or build up, was given to these 2 characters, Wayne and Marcy. Brandon Sanderson had been too engrossed with Wax, as I said, without realizing that there are still 2 key players in the entire arc. This approach makes the story one-dimensional. Sadly, it's one-dimensional, but it's no longer one-dimensional in third and fourth book. I tell you. In all fairness, I was glad that some of the elements in the original Mistborn had been infused in the second era of the series. We have Kandra, preservation, ruins, harmony, who you know in Mistborn 1, and of course, my ever favorite dog. Although technically he's not a dog, Tenson. The plot this time is easier to follow, and surprisingly, it affected my interest to be increased, gradually. Yes. The major takeaway of the book is that the themes are now well fleshed out. The politics. We have, in fact, the governor here who have been hiding in the mask of a particular villain. Yes, one of the abilities of a particular misting or Mistborn or Ferochimus, shall we say, is to touch someone and absorb the energy or the power, so that somebody who has that power will drain the power. Yes, and that would be an opportunity down his end. I love the revelation of Leslie here. In fact, Leslie is a very important character here. Yes, I realized that she's not just a character in book 1 that literally Brandon Sanderson ended but she has her part in book two. The plot development in book two actually was more interesting because of Leslie. Leslie, by the way, is or was the ex-lover of Wax, who have been shot to death in book one. But you know, there is a revelation in book two that would, make you feel, oh my god, what did just happen? Okay, the politics, as I said, become more intense because Ellendale has been in the clutch of corrupt officials. People are wallowing to their what you call that daily difficulties, such as in their wealth, their food, because of the major corruptions that happen in this place. Tenson has a very important part, I tell you. Mhm. Some new characters have been introduced here. Milan, who is a Kandra, she has her own, special character here. Yes, she has a very important role, as I said. And Paam, I don't know if I pronounce it right, but Paam is also one of the Kandras you would ever hate to see in real life. Overall, I really, really love Shadows of Self, and that is why from three in the Alley of Law, my rating here became higher, and now I rated this book 4 stars. Now let's keep going and talk about the third book of the entire series, The Bands of Mourning. The Bands of Mourning are the mythical metal mines owned by the Lord Ruler, said to grant anyone who wears them the power that Lord Ruler had in command. Hardly anyone thinks they really exist. A Kandra researcher had returned to Ellendale with images that seem to depict the bands, as well as writings in a language that no one can read. Waxilon Ladrian is recruited to travel south to the city of New Seran to investigate. Along the way, he discovers hints that point to the true goals of his uncle Edward and the shadowy organization known as the Set. Finally, Branson has given in this book something that I had been waiting to happen in books 1 and 2 of the entire series. And this swelled my heart to see some key characters shine in their own ways. Unlike in the previous books where only Waxilian Ladrian were given his moments, making them generally one-dimensional, in the Bands of Mourning, we saw extensive character development of Wayne and Marcy because they were given, in fact, their own roles or they have their own mission to accomplish to make the story a little more interesting. Even Styris had a moment of her own, unlike in previous books, where she only served as a background character. And by the way, Styris is the woman to whom Wax was wedded or has been married with. Mhm. And I in fact thought that, this character will just serve as a wife and nothing more. But here, she has really her own mission as well. And she's very important character, especially in the what you call that, in the coping of Wax from the previous events that happened in books 1 and 2, or even the third book. Mhm. It's both nostalgic and satisfying to see the lures in Mistborn Era 1 incorporated in the new series. Kendra, that to me is one of the major takeaways of the series because without Kendra, the series would still be very confusing. In fact, Brandon Sanderson had to go back to the history of Kendra, the origin, and at the same time, the blessings that they were given with by the Lord Ruler. Uh-huh. If you may have noticed, most of the characters in the book, are Kendra. Kendra, by the way, are in fact they're higher level than Miss Wraith. Yeah, they have their own how do I call it metals attached to them. In fact, they can copy the body of somebody or a person. Yes, because they are actually shapeless. Whether it's just a non-living thing or a living thing, they can actually absorb them. Yes, and form a shape. Yes. Uh yeah, it's really a pure nostalgia knowing sa Zed. Yes, in the person of, I don't know if it's the person, in the guise of the Lord called Harmony in this book, played a very important role. Yeah, Harmony, very important character, I tell you. Okay? I am very happy that I continued reading the whole series. Had I stopped reading, all the way in book one and did not anymore continue second, third book, then I would have regretted this. Good thing I continued my journey here with this book. Okay, and overall, I'm impressed. So I gave this book a 4.2 rating. Equally important information we got to see here in book 3 of Mistborn Era 2 is we got to unfold the real mission of the organization called the Set. We knew them on how they actually materialize, things here, and who are the people behind them. Oh my God. This reminds me of the main character's sister, Tendril. Oh my God. Oh, yeah. She's the person behind that organization called the Set. Set is the organization that wants to gather all allomancers, to bring down Elendel to its knees. Yes, because of, the specific reason you may be finding out in book 4, the lost metal. Speaking of the lost metal, that is something that I've been looking forward to talk about in this vlog because this has just been published this month, to be exact, November 15. And many people in the fantasy world have been talking about this while it's still hot. I've heard a lot of positive feedback on this, although we cannot disconcert the fact that many still are, not resolved with what happened in this story. Now, what is the lost metal about? For years, frontier lawman turned big city senator Waxilium Ladrian has hunted the shadowy organization, the Set, with his late uncle and his sister among their leaders, since they started kidnapping people with the power of allomancy in their bloodlines. When Detective Marasi comes and her partner Wayne find stockpiled weapons bound for the outer city of Bilming, this opens a new lead. Conflict between Elendil and the outer cities only favors the Set, and their tendrils now reach to the Elendil Senate, whose corruption Wax and Sturris have sought to expose, and Bilming is even more entangled. After Wax discovers a new type of explosive that can unleash the Set, the unprecedented destruction, and realize that this organization must already have it, an immortal Kandra serving Scadrial's god, Harmony, reveals that Bilming has fallen under the influence of another god, Trell, worshipped by the Set. And Trell isn't the only factor at play from the larger Cosmere. Marasi is recruited by the off-worlders with strange abilities who claim their goals to protect Scadrial, and we call that secret society the Ghost Blood. At any cost, Wax must choose whether to set aside his rocky relationship with God and once again become the sword that Harmony has groomed him to be. If no one steps forward to be a hero Scadrial needs, the planet and its millions of people will come to a sudden and calamitous ruin. Oh no. This conclusion to Mistborn Era 2 saga was a blast. It's both literally and figuratively a blast. An explosive convergence of the planets in Cosmere universe whose characters come together for a great cause, and an ending that might crush your heart to pieces because of the literal blast of events. You know what? I really admire Brandon Sanderson here because he gathered all his energy and creativity to make the conclusion of Wax and Way series a grander. Some might have been fed up already by the too complicated convergences of his novels, but it still holds true that this feature is what makes him pure genius. One of the explosives that Brandon Sanderson had in The Lost Meta is the interest of Marcy to join in Ghost Bloods, which is in fact a secret organization found in many planets in the Cosmere universe, especially in Rashar, the Stormlight Archive, for the purpose of protecting Skadrel from all threats. Members here are required to get at the two of three overlapping diamonds somewhere on their bodies. The symbols bear a resemblance to the three petal shape of Mirwil flowers. Many members of the organization have been mentioned here in the Lost Meta. And yeah, they have their code names. And successfully, they were able to invite Marase to join the group. Yeah. And that is something I find, very interesting feature of this book. And it's a blast. Another thing here is there is a character in Elantris that joined in the story, The Lost Metal, and that's Case. We knew her as a brother of Lukel. Sister of Lukel in Elantris. And sadly, Brandon Sanderson mentioned her in this book. In fact, she's there in the book itself, in the story itself. Thirdly, the ancient gods. We call autonomy and of course harmony. We know him, Sased. Yes, Trell, as I mentioned in the blurb or the premise of the book a moment ago, is one that the set members would bank on. He is the god that they actually side on. While harmony, of course, is God that considers Wax in this series as his sword. He has a very important role to save Elantris from an imminent destruction. Another explosive in this book is that, the introduction of some god metals. Yes, we have here Lyration. I forget the term, but it's Lyration, which is a very important metal that Lord Ruler used to make Mistborn. Yes, this is a very spoilery review, so please stop, if you haven't yet read this book. Overall, this book received the highest rating of the entire series, and it's a solid 5. Five. Who wouldn't give this 5? Okay. All right. So that's all my over thoughts about the entire series, Mistborn Era 2. Overall, I'm not as impressed as the first book when compared with the third and fourth book, but it still is one of the astounding series. Yes, as usual, written by one of my favorite authors of high fantasy books, Brandon Sanderson. All right. I hope you were entertained by this vlog that I made. People who love Cosmere universe like to watch videos that have got to do with this, and I myself, in fact, would watch videos that relate to that one. Okay. Now, before we end this vlog, I invite you to please subscribe to my channel, Clark Ken, and do not forget to like this video and push the notification bell if you want to get updates from the videos that I'm making. Okay? Thank you so much and have a good day.